She would love that. My brother's going to start over there. You can give him your attention. Right.
Golden ones are hidden. You know, my mother passed away on Wednesday. I'm David Doyaga. I'm her oldest son, and my brother Mark is her other son. We are her two remaining children. And when we met Wednesday night, my brother and I, we spoke, and then Justin joined us Thursday night. We were talking about my mother, and somebody said, you know, the way you talk, it seems very harsh. So I realized before I spoke, I needed to give a warning. Don't misunderstand anything I say. I loved my mother. But this is not a story about butterflies and cupcakes. This is a story about a tough, driven woman. My mother, at the age of 4, her father passed away in 1930 during the Depression, leaving 2 girls, my mother and older sister Mary, and their mother, Eugenia, who was uneducated, not stupid. There's a difference. She wasn't stupid, but she was not an educated person. At that time, probably didn't speak any English and worked in a factory. My mother lived in a level of poverty. She told me that if her mother was too sick to go to work, and she had to be terribly sick not to go to work, the next paycheck or payday was light, and they would have a diet day when maybe they had a bowl of soup the whole day. That's the level. Those 2 girls were raised. My mother graduated high school at 16. She graduated 4-year college at 19. She became a licensed teacher, was teaching Abraham Lincoln High School before she was 20. Because she was the youngest person, the new one, they gave her the toughest class to teach, returning GIs. One of the GI Bill was being taught. They were rough, they were tough, but they met their match. She told me that when they got out of line, she always dressed like a beautiful diva, and high heels, gorgeous. She was a beautiful woman, and she loved being beautiful. And when those GIs got out of line, she'd come over, and she'd take the heel and dig it into their boot. Oh, I'm so sorry. Did I hurt you? You shouldn't be so loud and rambunctious. She taught them. She was a teacher, and she was a gifted teacher. But those 3 Basque women, alone in that Depression, now, they clung to their community, and that's what saved them. They were smart. They clung to their Basque community, but they were tough women. And they did what they were determined to do. My mother, I'm not going to give all the details of her life, and some people want to talk about her accomplishments. I'm going to talk about the character of the woman, but she eventually went on to become the Vice President of Academic Affairs at State University of Old Westbury. And believe me, she did it at a time when there was a prejudice against women, and she had to fight doubly hard and achieve doubly to get to where she was. If I had to say the thought about my mother and her relationship to her children, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren, is she refused to let us fail. It was not acceptable. You could fail because you tried hard. And if you did, she would say to you, okay, learn from what you did wrong, dust yourself off, and get back in that ring and keep fighting. My wife told the story. When she first took the CPA exam, she failed. Very common the first time. She spoke to my mother. My mother said, it's okay, failure's okay. Kerry, you go back in there, study. And of course, she went back and she passed. I'm going to take a moment to introduce her grandchildren who are here. And if you wouldn't mind to stand up for a minute, I'm going to start with David Jr., Justin Doyaga, Christopher Doyaga, Elizabeth Doyaga, her only granddaughter, and Matthew Doyaga. These are her grandchildren. She loved them to death. And I tell you something, she taught each one of them how to write a paper, how to study, and when they didn't do it, they did it. Because she did, and let me tell you something, she came from an era where physical violence was acceptable. You understand? They were, if they got grabbed by the hair, quick slap, and right back to the books. But there isn't one of them here that doesn't know that they weren't deeply loved. If you would just sit down for a moment, I want to introduce her great-grandchildren. Would you? I'm going to start with Poyraz Doyaga. This is David Jr.'s son. Benjamin Doyaga, stand up. This is, stand up, stand up. Okay, this is Justin Doyaga's son. This is Jack. This is Justin Doyaga's son. And this angel is Justin Doyaga's daughter. These are the great-grandchildren. Excuse me. There's so many. And the last one, Matthew.
Oh yeah, two more. Oh, so there are
Two more.
Excuse me. And they could not be here.
Yeah.
We also have Holly, Christopher's daughter Holly, and his son Lucas. Those are the great-grandchildren. No, I said the great, not
But there are 7 of them.
the seven, yes, the 7 great-grandchildren of Emily Doyaga. Now, I wouldn't do justice to my mother if I didn't tell you that she is looking down and she's going to tell you, don't you fail her. Because that memory that priest spoke about, that memory was, she drove out of that desperate poverty. She died a millionaire many times over because of her hard work. She made herself. Don't you let her down. You hear me? Don't you let her down. Don't you give up. You get back and you study and you fight. You can sit down. Except for you, Ruby, and Elizabeth. I'm sorry.
No, I hate to say this, your mother would not be happy unless I mentioned. Out of all of your grandchildren, you did not mention Ruby's name.
Oh, well, I got special.
No, for the females, cannot do that, and you know that.
So, Elizabeth and Ruby, I have special words for the two of you, and that's why I've asked you to stay. My mother was the original feminist. Now, you know she wasn't the original feminist, but she was a feminist. And she would say to the two of you, don't you ever let anybody, man or woman, tell you you can't be everything you want to be. Because you are a woman, you can do anything. You are brilliant, like your great-grandmother and like your grandmother, and you can achieve anything you want. And don't let anything stand in your way. You got it? Okay. Because you girls are the continuation of those 3 Basque women that got out of that poverty and went on to achieve what they did. So you achieve and you achieve as the heirs of those Basque women. They were some crew, that cabal of those 3 Basque women. I'm telling you, they were something else. You can sit down. Thank you, sweetheart. So, finally, just a few words. I want to mention some people that, if you don't mind, I want to give special mention. And one of them is Anna Aguirre. And would you stand up if you want? Would you come over to me? You know, when you visit your own mother once a week, that's your obligation. When you visit someone else's mother, you're a saint. Anna Aguirre would have lunch or dinner, depending on the time of the day, with my mother once a month.
Every week.
Every week sometimes.
Every week.
Depending
Well,
on
I would
what-
come and visit every week,
Right.
but we would have dinner or lunch at least once a month together.
By the way, and my mother at the end could barely speak. So if you didn't think that was a labor of love and a sacrifice, then you're wrong. That was a great gift, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart.
No thanks are necessary. I loved your
I
mom
love you.
dearly.
Thank you,
Well, it's family.
thank you.
And Emily, Mary, her sister, along with my mother Irene and her sister Delphina, were 4 cousins,
Right.
okay? And they were Spitfires together,
Yeah.
okay? I mean, I do have a couple of family stories, but we can get into that later. But the 4 of them grew up together. They were as thick as thieves. And my grandfather, Melchior, was your grandmother's
Right.
brother. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but in those dark, tough years, my grandfather was doing okay. He was doing pretty well, all right? I mean, the family wasn't starving. But what he would do is that he would actually make loans to your grandmother to bring up Emily and Mary and never, ever asked for a penny back.
That was the best
Okay?
community.
That
They
was
took
the
care of
best.
each other.
We took care of each other.
That's right.
And especially if we were family. All right? And, well, the mischief, as another cousin of mine sent me an email the other day when I gave her the news. All right, and this is Terry in Texas. She said, I can just imagine, because everybody else had predeceased Emily. So she comes back with an email saying, I can just imagine the mischief those 4 girls are getting into up there. And rightly so, because they got into plenty of mischief on this good God's earth as well. And they will be remembered. And just to let you know, your mom is on the news in Euskadi. Yeah, on the television and in the newspapers. So the word has gone out. Yeah, because I know people that you didn't contact, but yes, I did. I felt it was necessary, and being family, we take care of each other, and that's what it comes down to. You're welcome, sweetheart.
I also want to say a few words about my wife, and I'll tell you why. Because I told you this is not going to be a story about, little cuddles. And my wife and my mother, they did battle. They're strong women, right? They were strong women. They did battle. But when my mother became ill, my wife, 2 boys taking care of a woman, you can imagine, the slippers were mismatching, the dress. My wife came in there, in spite of the feelings that they had before, forgave, and then did the things that only a woman and a mother would do for another mother, taking care of her, that she had nice clothes, that she looked pretty, and that she felt pretty. And I thank you, Carrie, for that. But finally, I have to tell you about my brother, and he'll speak, I'm sure, but I want to tell you about the truth. My brother took care of my mother. 99% my brother, 1% me. And when I tell you took care of her, I'm talking about who took her to the doctor, who took her to the hairdresser, who took her to get her medication. That's the man that took care of my mother when she was sick. And he gave her all to take care of her. And Mark, you're a blessing. You are a blessing to your mother, you're a blessing to this family, you're a blessing to me. And I love you, and I hope you're not too emotional. Say a few words about Mom.
Thank you, Mother. I'm sure I'm going to fall apart in the middle of this, so bear with me.